Newsmax TV's coverage of the third and final presidential debate of the campaign year 2016 continues at this point. Welcome back. I'm J.D. Hayworth at Newsmax TV's National Anchor Desk, and we invite you to give us a call to let us know what you thought of tonight's debate. You can call us at 1-877-NEWSMAX. That's 1-877-639-7629. We are pleased to be rejoined now by presidential historian and Reagan biographer Craig Shirley. Craig, of course, with his fourth volume about Ronald Reagan, due out quite quickly, I believe, as we yield to the springtime here, Craig. But we don't have to wait that long to get some assessments here as we welcome you back into the coverage. In the time you've been away, first of all, we give you due credit for inventing the smirkometer tonight in terms of Hillary Clinton. But there have been concerns raised. Dick Morris and others have said Mr. Trump's answer toward the end of the debate when he said, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to be ready to concede. That could be problematic for him both in coverage tonight and in the papers tomorrow and for the remainder of the campaign. What say you about that now infamous remark?
Sure, because the ultra-leftist corrupt media, of which they gave 96% of their donations to Hillary, is spinning it that way because he pummeled her in 14 out of 15 rounds. He nailed her on the criminality of her campaign, paying homeless people and violent people to disrupt his rallies. He nailed her on Benghazi. He nailed her on Syria. He nailed her on Iran. And every time, and I say that she smirked only half jokingly, is that she has a nervous tick. When she's cornered, when she's caught lying, when she's on the defensive, she smirks. It's just a tick that some people have. And so the media can't talk about the other points that he beat her about the head and shoulders about. So they pick on the one thing. And by the way, is that it is a conservative's responsibility to question authority. Remember when she was coming up in the 60s, when she was a radical feminist and hippie, at Woodstock, is that the mantra of the left was question authority. But now the conservatives have adopted it. Somehow they object and they defend the institution. Our job as conservatives is to always question authority and raise the idea that elections might be rigged. And in so doing, that will put more sunlight on the election to ensure it is not rigged.
Bringing some more sunlight to this discussion, albeit acknowledging that it's late at night on the East Coast, is the gentleman you see each weeknight here on Newsmax TV at 7 and again at 10 p.m. Eastern, our good buddy Steve Malzberg. Steve, picking up on what Craig Shirley had to say, my old House colleague Pete Hoekstra just a couple of minutes ago said, no, wait a minute. Donald Trump's a businessman, and I don't mean to be trite about this, Steve, but I had the image of, you know how you go out to eat sometimes and they bring the check? Trump reminds me of a guy who will go through the check, check the facts and figures, and make sure he's been charged fairly. Is that a reasonable analogy for him to bounce back with tomorrow in terms of election results?
Yeah, I think in that language, or using a different analogy or different language, I think he needs to clear it up, and he needs to say either the campaign issues a statement, or better yet, when he goes on any shows or when he holds his next rally, says, look, when I said I would let you know on election night if I accept the results, if I should lose, I can't commit to that. That's a blank check, and I don't give blank checks, which is to your analogy. And I got to see if there's voter fraud. I got to see if there's people at the polls with billy clubs, Black Panthers, like there were in Philadelphia. I have to reserve my judgment until after the fact. I think he needs to do that. And because the left, as Craig Shirley correctly stated, they are going nuts with that, and they're also going nuts with the hombre comment. There are some bad hombres, when he was talking about the illegals in this country who commit murder.
That is so ludicrous about that when he's talking about a serious subject such as the border. Tell you what, let's find out what some of our viewers thought about tonight's debate and what appealed to them and maybe what didn't. At 1-877-NEWSMAX, 1-877-639-7629 to New Albany, Indiana is where Louise is on the line. Hi, Louise.
Hi, how are you?
Doing fine. What's your take?
Well, I think he did just fine. He's not a politician. He's a businessman. And the last thing that America needs is another politician. We need somebody to get us back on course. And we don't need a liar. We don't need a thief. We don't need all of that to do it. We need Mr. Trump.
All right, we appreciate that, Louise. Now let's go out to Littleton, Colorado, where Mike may have some thoughts for us. Hi, Mike.
Hi, JD. How you guys doing tonight?
Doing well. Your take on everything this evening, Mike?
So, JD, I think you hit the high points, security and economics, that most people and me care about. No amnesty, secure the border, restore law enforcement, defend the Second Amendment, great. But he did something that I've been waiting to hear finally. He's a reform candidate. He's not a lawyer. He almost said it the way I said it. Our enemy is not the Russians. The Russians are our cousins. The enemy is ISIS. Hillary completely took her eye off the ball on ISIS. They spread to, I think he said, 32 countries. This is insane. Why were we paying her all this money to be Secretary of State? But we're not supposed to fight the Russians. They're our kindred spirit.
And as you say that, Mike, my colleague Steve Malzberg is nodding along with you. Steve, is this a case where we often talk about the voice of the people? In this case, it's the ears of the people back home, while the leftist press and those of us in politics focus on one thing, what Mike points out from Littleton, Colorado, as being a basic truth. Do you believe that resonates beyond Mike's house in Littleton, elsewhere in this country, in terms of foreign policy?
Yeah, I think when he says, wouldn't it be nice if we could get along with the Russians and combine our efforts and go after ISIS, because you've had your eyes on the wrong ball. We've been going after Assad, who he stressed, I don't like Assad. You're going to say I do now, but I don't like Assad. He's a bad guy. But we have to concentrate on getting ISIS. One other thing, when Chris Wallace brought up, and this is what I thought the caller might have said when he said he was waiting to hear this, when Chris Wallace brought up the Clinton Foundation, Trump shocked me. I was so happy. He said, would you give back the money that you took from countries that throw gays off of rooftops and treat women like garbage? But he didn't pursue it. He didn't say, will you? Will you? And I wish he would have pursued that.
Well, and this is part of what happens, because tonight, Craig Shirley, Donald Trump was much more restrained, much more reserved, and ironically, some of the people who said he was too animated earlier now thought he was a bit too Sphinx-like tonight. Your take on his demeanor, and how does that come out in the wash? We've got about a minute left.
I thought it was just fine. I agree with you. He was much more reserved in the first 20 minutes to a half hour, but then he became much more animated. It is clear, obviously, that these two people just really loathe each other. They just can't stand each other. It is from their body language to their interruption of each other to their attacks on each other to in every way, shape, and form. They just can't stand each other. This is I can't recall the last time when two politicians hated each other so much.
Well, we might have to go.
Maybe 72 with Nixon and McGovern.
Maybe, or we might have to go back to Adams and Jefferson, but I don't know if it'll get that way. Steve, let me ask you about that. The aspect of loathing. Did loathing lead to a kind of lackluster performance on the part of both of them? 30 seconds, Steve.
I don't know. I know that the media made a big deal beforehand. Will they shake hands beforehand and then afterward? Are they going to shake hands afterwards? I don't know. I think you're going to have 50 million people who vote for Donald Trump, whether that's enough to win, who are going to despise Hillary Clinton afterward for 4 years, and vice versa. I just don't see this country coming together. Hillary's not the kind of person that would bring the country together. We're all deplorables to her, and I wish Trump would have mentioned that as well.
Some missed opportunities. Gentlemen, I wish we could spend more time talking, but the clock on the wall gets to us. Craig Shirley, thanks very much. Steve, we know we'll see you in a bit, and we'll see you every weeknight here on Newsmax TV. And what we want you to see at home is this question. Who do you think won tonight's debate? Cast your vote at newsmaxpolls.com. Back with a roundtable of our Newsmax TV colleagues on what they saw, what they thought, and more of your calls as our post-debate coverage rolls on this evening from Newsmax TV.